I would just sit on my prayer mat and I would just read the Quran. And I remember reading the Quran, and one of the first feelings that I had was that, man, I'm like 3 pages in and I haven't thought about this girl. And this is further than I ever got in any book before thinking about this girl. Assalamu alaikum, and we are back with another episode of the Jahiliya Diaries. And before we get started with anything, just want to say a huge jazakallah khair for all your love and your support. I know a lot of you guys have been keeping up with these Jahiliya Diaries, and for that it means the world to me, and just your love and your support goes a long way with me. And if you're new to this Jahiliya Diaries, just know that this is a series in which I teach you from my own mistakes, in which I share some of my older mistakes before I really turned to Islam, and it helps you avoid making those same pitfalls and errors that I've made, and perhaps you can learn from my mistakes as well too. And of course we have some laughs and jokes in these series as well. Today's Jahiliya Diary is about how I accepted Islam. Now before we continue with this video, I first need to say that you need to hit this video with a huge thumbs up. But bro, you haven't even said anything yet and you want me to already hit this with a thumbs up? But how do I know you even felt like the video or not? You just want a thumbs up? Commenting and thumbs up actually helps support this video, and it helps this video reach the correct type of audience. And if you're not giving it a thumbs up or dropping some comments, just know that in the YouTube algorithm thingamajig, it just doesn't show up on people's pages. So if you want people to learn and benefit from these videos, the best way that you can do that, besides sharing this video, which you all should, I hope you're doing right now, you need to drop a thumbs up and a comment, because that definitely helps promote this video. Now I just need to be clear over here on what I mean exactly by I accepted Islam. For those of you who have followed my Jahiliya Diaries and you know a little bit about me, you know that I have a Pakistani background, meaning my parents are from Pakistan, therefore I am Pakistani. I'm very proud to be Pakistani as well, might I add. So technically I grew up as a Muslim, but it was by name and culture. I really wanted nothing to do with it at all. And if you click on one of these Jahiliya Diaries over here, it'll tell you about how I ran away from my past and I wanted nothing to do with my identity of being a Muslim, because I didn't really see myself as a Muslim, nor did I want to be seen as a Muslim, because I sort of wanted to get away from all that. So I might have known what's right from wrong, but I could have cared less from what's right from wrong. I had zero consciousness of Allah, and I genuinely couldn't care less of how Allah viewed me or not, because I genuinely just didn't care. I wanted to do me, I was happy doing me, and I was having a lot of fun in the process. But something that really woke me up and shook me up a little bit, that caused me to stop and really reflect over my life and see what I've built my life based upon, was my ex-girlfriend. And that video is also linked in one of these corners over here, in which you could sort of get the background about what I'm talking about and understand where I'm coming from. So I was down in the dumps and I didn't know anything. I had broken up with this girl. I went back to the same old lifestyle, but it just wasn't fulfilling me whatsoever. And what ended up happening was that I thought that I just needed a change of scenery. I needed to travel, I had to get out of New York City, and I needed to go somewhere else. So in the process, I decided that what would be a great idea would be me traveling to Pakistan. Now going to Pakistan, I thought that I was going to get away from all this sort of setting and all those things that reminded me of her and all those things that had me all sprung up on this girl, and I kept on thinking about her daily. And I just thought that maybe if I left the area, it would help me not think about her so much anymore. And I was right, it did help me. I traveled, I went to Pakistan for about 3 weeks to a month, and I just lived and I stayed with my family over there, and it was a blast. I didn't really think about that girl, and whenever I would think about this girl, I would just get it out my mind. People in New York missed me, they wanted to hang out with me. I just felt great, but I realized I had to come home. And when I came back to New York, I came back to the same lifestyle that I was into, and I realized that, man, I really haven't gotten over this girl yet. And I thought that I was going to be able to get over this girl, but all I was doing was just sweeping the dirt underneath the carpet. To the surface, it looked like the house was clean, but all the dirt was really just stuck underneath the carpet. And that's what I realized about most of my life. I never really dealt with these problems head on. And a lot of us do this as well. A lot of us don't deal with the problems, we just mask those problems. And we never really solve the actual issue, the underlying issue to why we have that pain or problem, but we just mask it up and cover it and think that we've actually healed or fixed the problem, but we really have not. We've just put a band-aid over the scar, but we haven't really treated the wound. It's at a huge risk of getting an infection. And the spiritual infection that we can have is sadness, anxiety, depression, just a sense of lack of contentment, because we're not really solving the issue that's causing our heart pain, which is the lack of the remembrance of Allah. So when I came back to New York, I realized immediately that, man, like I was so much more happier in Pakistan. It was great in Pakistan. I might just have to go back to Pakistan. So this is around the summertime, and my mom told me that she plans to go to Pakistan, and I'm just like, listen, take me with you. Even though I just came back a few weeks ago, I wanted to go back to Pakistan because it helped me not think about this girl too much. And you know, when we go to Pakistan, we want to stay there for like a month and a half to 2 months because the ticket's so expensive and there's all this family there and there's so much to do that you don't want to just go there for a week and a half to 2 weeks. You want to stay there for a longer amount of time. So my mom was going for about 2 months or so and I'm like, listen, let me join you. And that's exactly what I did, and I had a great time, and I realized that this is what I need. Pakistan has all the cures for me. Pakistan is the solution. So I went around there and subhanAllah, the first month passed by, and immediately within 2 weeks of that first month of being there, I realized that, man, the thoughts of this girl has traveled with me from New York to Pakistan as well. Like, I was using Pakistan as an escapism. And I want to use this as an example because there's a lot of people who have their own version of Pakistan. They're doing something to escape the reality. They're doing something to escape the pain that they're in and the pain that someone or something has caused them. And that's just no way to live. You got to deal with the problems head on. And I remember 3 weeks in, and I'm thinking to myself, like, yo, I keep thinking about this girl again. I'm not over this girl, and I genuinely don't know what's going on or what to do anymore. And more about the background information about who this girl actually is in one of these cards over here about who this girl actually was in my life. So click the link in the card so you could watch the Jahiliya diaries about my ex-girlfriend to have more context about what I'm talking about. Anyways, Pakistan is no longer any more fun for me. But there was something incredible, life-changing that was about to happen in about a week's time when I started feeling really bad about myself. And that amazing time was the month of Ramadan. You see, 8 years ago marks the time where I truly became more conscious of Allah. And Ramadan is a special month to me because it represents more than just fasting. It represents a completely new leaf that I turned once upon a time 8 years ago. As far as Ramadan is concerned, though I might not have been religious, though I did not probably care about Allah and the religion and like care about being a Muslim, one thing about me was that I always used to fast because that was just something I thought that I had to do, and it was just something cool. I enjoyed it, actually. I thought it was a really cool idea, and I sort of vibed with it a little bit, you know. And there's a lot of you out there who might not be religious, but you still fast, and shout out to you, you know. Don't think that it's a waste of time, it's starvation, but you're not getting anything in overall. But that's not true, because I came from that background, and just know where I am today wouldn't have happened if I wasn't who I was before. So if you're someone who's just fasting, going with the motions, you don't really pray, you're not really reading Quran, you're not really like religious or spiritual, but you're just fasting, just know that maybe that's the deed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves about you, and He helps you turn over that new leaf like the same way He helped me turn my new leaf. Something that my mom used to say to me that's really important, I'm sure some of your moms would have told you as well, that there's no real point of fasting if you're not really going to pray or read Quran, because then you're just starving yourself, and you need to really connect with yourself. And I realized that what better place for me to connect than being in Pakistan. And if you know anything about Pakistan and Ramadan, it is extremely hot, because 8 years ago it was in the summertime and it was blazing hot, and no stores, no shops, nothing's open during the daytime anyway, so there's nothing for you to do at the house at all. So I realized that, listen, I need to really like connect with my inner self. So during those 3 weeks prior to the month of Ramadan, I thought that I needed to go on a little bit more of a spiritual or self-realization journey. So I picked up a few of the major texts that we know of. So I picked up the Gita, and that's why I have one of my tattoos is in Sanskrit as well too, because even from before, I thought that there was some really goodness in this book, but every time I read it, I just remembered that stuff didn't match with me, some things that didn't connect with me, some things didn't make sense, and most importantly, I never felt that peace or pleasure by reading that book, because within reading that book, I would always think about this girl, and then my mind would wander away from the book, and I would start thinking about her, and it was just a mess. In the process, picked up some books about Buddhism. In the process too, I saw some goodness in them, but I just didn't really connect or vibe with it as well. Same thing would happen, the same thing with the Gita. I picked up some of the Old Testament and the New Testament. That just didn't sit well with me, because it felt like I was reading two different books. And in the New Testament, it was talking about this idea that just didn't make sense to me. I realized that it was a higher power, but the way that those books were describing it, it just didn't really vibe with me. And that's why one of my tattoos said, "My faith doesn't have a church," because I genuinely believe that there's no faith that could describe how I feel about God, because I think that all religions were man-made until I found Islam. Now, I pretty much ruled out all the books because they either served me no benefit, I disagreed with some stuff, or they just didn't have that spiritual impact that I was really yearning for. So I finally decided to give this a chance or a shot, and I had the iQuran app downloaded on my phone at that time, and honestly, I must have had that app prior to opening it for at least 2 years. And subhanAllah, I never got around to opening it. Like, I never even read the Fatiha with the translation at all. And I didn't know how to read Arabic, and I thought this was the perfect opportunity. So I would pray, and even if I didn't know how to pray, I would sort of like, I knew the motions and a little bit of here and there, like what to say. I think I knew the Fatiha, and that's about it. I would just pray, and then afterwards, I would just sit on my prayer mat, and I would just read the Quran. And I remember reading the Quran, and one of the first feelings that I had was that, man, I'm like 3 pages in and I haven't thought about this girl. And this is further than I ever got in any book before thinking about this girl. And I was just like, yo, like, this is amazing. Like, I just wanted to read the book for the sheer fact that I wasn't thinking about this chick anymore. Like, I felt relieved, subhanAllah, that, yo, like, this book has gotten my mind off this girl. So I was reading the translation of the Quran, and it was just incredible because I wasn't reading it for its message. I was reading it straight for the sole fact that it didn't allow me to think about this girl anymore, which was great. But in the process of me actually reading this book, I realized that, yo, this book is actually really intriguing, and the things that it's saying is quite interesting. And a lot of the stories that I was reading, I'm like, yo, I heard about this, but I heard it from a different variation, and this is different from what I heard it before. And I realized that a lot of my knowledge about Islam or the Quran came from people who have told me things about it, but I didn't know anything myself. I really didn't go through those primary sources to figure out myself. And along this journey, I realized that, man, this book is special because, like, I'm not thinking about this girl, and that was the only reason I was reading the Quran. It had sparked my interest. It made me really intrigued about all the things that were going on, and it really caused me to self-reflect a lot. And I would go through different tests where I would try to test this book out, where I would try to go a day without reading this book. But wallahi, I would come back to this book crawling because I realized immediately that my feeling good was linked to the Quran, and I would not be feeling good if it wasn't for this book. So I didn't know what was special about this book. I didn't believe it was a book from God. It was nothing like that for me. It was just this book, just like I was reading the Gita or anything else, so I could like distract myself from thinking about her. The only difference is that this book actually worked in helping me distract myself from thinking about this girl. I realized that I couldn't go hours without reading it because the moment I would stop reading this book is the moment I'd start thinking about this girl. So I had linked my success to not think about her anymore with the Holy Quran. And like I said, at this time, I did not think that it was a book from God. I thought that it was also a man-made book, just like any other book, you know? And I remember just sitting down, and now it's not even, my intention is like shifting away from me being distracted from her. And now it's more like, yo, I'm actually excited to read this book because it's quite interesting and it's quite intriguing. And I remember I come across this verse, I believe it was after Asr time. And throughout, every single time I was reading the Quran, I would be reading a few verses and then I would just stop reading and I would just like stare at my phone and I would just ponder over what it's saying. I would just keep staring at it and just thinking in my mind about what this just said to me. And my phone would go blank. Like the screensaver would turn on, like I would have to put my password back in because I would just be staring at my phone and all of a sudden like it just shuts off because like I'm just thinking about what this book was actually saying. It became like, yo, this book is like really profound or like more helpful than I thought. I remember after Asr time, I was sitting reading the book. I remember I came across this verse. Even now, thinking about this verse, it gives me chills till this day. I was reading this verse in the Quran and it said that indeed in the remembrance of Allah do hearts truly find contentment and peace. And when that happened, I had to turn my phone off. I was reading on my phone. I had to turn it off and I just shifted it off. Like it wasn't even me being pondering now. Like I had to shift this off and just say, how did it know that? How did it know that? Like, how did this book know that? How does it know about its own healing qualities? That's what's baffled me about this book. Like, how did the book know about its own beauty? Like, from my perspective, I felt like this book was alive. I felt like this book was speaking to me, and that's when it started inching in my heart that this book couldn't be written by a man, because a man wouldn't be so arrogant to think that its creation is that amazing. And if it did think it was that amazing, it would have gotten some holes poked in it from the beginning. But this book didn't have any holes. It really did give me that peace and contentment, and I'm thinking, how does the book know that about itself? After that, I started taking the book more seriously because I'm just like, yo, this is some stuff right now. And I would read these verses about the day of judgment, and I would read these verses about, you know, testifying against yourself and your eyes and your skin testifying against you, and I'm like, wow, like this is some real stuff right now. I started thinking about the day of judgment, and I started thinking about how I'm going to be brought back to Allah. and I'm gonna be like asked about what I've done. And if I neglect this message right now, if I act like I didn't just learn this, if I act like none of this is true, if I act like I know what's right from wrong, but I'm still not gonna follow that, yo, wallahi, forget me. My skin is gonna testify against me. It's gonna bear witness against me that, yo, this dude read your book. I held the book, and he still went against what he learned. That blew my mind. And one of the things that I realized, I had connected that, listen, if I want to be successful when I return back to New York, because Ramadan is about to be over, and I realized that if I wanted to remain successful, even when I came back to New York, because I started getting scared, guys. I was so scared that when I came back to New York, that I was going to return back to my depression. I was going to go back to rock bottom. But I made some promises to myself, and I want you to hear me out. After this, I made some promises to myself in the month of Ramadan that no matter what happens, when I go back to New York, I'm not going to give up my prayer. That's one habit that I developed within the month of Ramadan that really helped me out. I'm not going to give up my prayer. That's number one. I'm not going to give up reading the Quran. I'm not. And I was afraid because I was coming to an end in the Quran, and I realized like it's getting less and less. When this book is over, I'm gonna just start it up back again and just start reading again and see what other new message I could get. So two things that I was gonna do when I went back to New York to make sure that I don't fall back into that depression was continue to pray and continue to read the Quran. Because I realized that my success, my feeling good about myself, my depression being cured, anxiety being cured, me not thinking about this chick and having stress on my mind was linked to these two things. And I consciously became aware of those two things, had my success. That was my medicine. It was time for me to go back to New York. And I didn't realize the amount of pressure that I was gonna face. Because when I went back to New York, though when I was in Pakistan, it was a fantasy, my life was paused. But back home in New York, things were still going on. Like there was still, like I had to return back to my old life. And I had to like ask myself and decide to myself like, yo, how am I gonna go back to that? Like I'm literally made resolves for myself that I'm not going to be drinking anymore. Yet the first night I landed and I touched down back in New York, my friends is just like, yo, let's get saucy. Let's twist up this blunt. Let's go drink. Let's get twisted. You know, like my friends are telling me, inviting me to a party. They're throwing parties for me when I'm coming back. You know, like there's chicks that are hitting me up. And now it's just like, man, how do I stay truthful? How do I stay faithful to my own new values and beliefs? Because I realized that I have different values and beliefs now. I don't have those anymore. And the toughest thing for me to adjust when I came back to New York was learning how to say no. And that's a problem that a lot of us are having right now. A lot of us are in this mode where we realize that there's certain things that are wrong and we don't want to do these things anymore. We want to change actually, but we just don't know how to say no. We don't know how to break away from those friends and bad influences anymore. And that's one thing that like I was stuck upon, and that's one of the biggest challenges I had when I came to New York. How I overcame those challenges is going to be a different Jahiliya diary, inshallah. But that was this Jahiliya diary, guys. How I turned to Islam for the very first time and how I came back to Islam. And it's special to me. The month of Ramadan is special to me because it reminds me of who I used to be. Just 8 years ago, guys. Like 8 years is nothing. Like really ask yourself, 8 years is not much. I'm still new to this. That was when I was at the age of 22. Somehow I'm at the age of 30 right now, guys. A lot of you are like, damn, SQ, you look good for 30. But most of you are like, 30, bro, I thought you were 45 this whole time. Like I had 22 years of Jahiliya in me. It's wrong for me to think that in 8 years, all 22 years of Jahiliya would disappear like this. It takes time. And my biggest struggles when I came back to New York, and even till this day, was removing some of my Jahiliya mindset, habits, thoughts of my own self and how I view the world, because I was programmed. I had programmed myself for 22 years to be in that Jahiliya mindset. And I want to let you know that if you're someone who's just turned back to Allah, if you're someone who's trying to turn back to Allah, take it gradually. Take some baby steps. Be patient with yourself because you have years of Jahiliya to overcome, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. Enjoy the journey. That main epiphany happens only once. Enjoy that. Enjoy the struggle to improve. Take everything as a challenge. Take your bad habits and your evil ideas and your thoughts and your mindset that's negative as a challenge that you want to improve your relationship with Allah. And every single time you defeat a bad habit, you level up. Every single time you're leveling up your iman, getting closer and closer to Allah. So don't go down on yourself, guys. Like, be patient with yourself. Take everything step by step and take things gradually. Don't rush into anything. Don't jump into anything head first. take your time. It's like jumping into the pool. You don't want to jump immediately. You want to dip your foot in the water first, get your body adjusted to it, and slowly release yourself inside the pool. Anything else could cause a lot of shock, which could cause you to drown spiritually. I appreciate you watching this Jahiliya Diaries, guys. Make sure that you hit this video with a huge thumbs up, especially if you benefited. Please drop a comment or some feedback in the comment section below about what your thoughts were. How can you relate to this? Do you know someone who's been through this? Have you been through this? And just your overall thoughts about this Jahiliya Diary. I'm sorry for this not being so funny and lighthearted, but you know what? This topic is really emotional to me because it's 8 years ago that I actually turned back to Allah, and I struggle daily as much as you guys do. Don't think I don't. But to see my growth that I've made from who I used to be to who I am now makes me feel really proud about myself, because I know what kind of person I was, and it wasn't someone worthy of even mentioning. And there's so many people out there who's watching me right now, you guys watching me right now, who are 50 times better than me, guys, and I want you guys to be more successful than I am right now. So please drop some feedback in the comment section below. Tell me how this video helped you out. Hit this video with a huge thumbs up, and tell me in the comment section below, what should the next Jahiliya Diary be about? Tell me if it should be about my tattoos and how I got them and what they mean and what they symbolize. And thank you once again for watching. It really means a lot to me. Next time I see you, it's going to be Eid, and I don't know when you're going to watch this video, but inshallah, if you watch it anytime later, just know a huge Eid Mubarak from me and my family to you. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Take care of yourself, and until next time, I'm out.